Recording. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming for this next lab in our Data Science Learning Lab series from Cruz. And we're going to start showing what you're going to present today. So I'm just going to share my screen. And that's it. So it's going to be presented by me and Daniel. So, and the lab of today is going to be the fundamentals of R, Flexdashboard and Shiny for data science. So the goal for today is to learn how to create an app from the scratch. So the agenda, we're going to talk about the Cruz Data Science Initiative, what we do and everything. We're going to give some app demonstration. First, what you're going to be building by the end of the session. The data set that you're using, the ARIS data set that's related to plants. The analysis that you're going to be doing there, that's going to be a k-means clustering analysis. Then we're going to do how to build the app and some closing notes. So it's going to be hosted by me, by myself, Marcelo Guarido. I'm a data science, who is a PhD in geophysics, and I'm also head of the Cruz Data Science Initiative. And Daniel Tread, you can present yourself.
Yeah, I'm associate professor here at the University of Calgary and associate director in Cruz. And I'm pretty much helping and learning from Marcelo about R. And so following the data science initiative from Cruz, where we are exploring all different aspects of machine learning and neural networks.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. So I'm going to turn off my video so we can see the full screen better. So we should start now talking about the Cruz Data Science Initiative. So we are a consortium at the University of Calgary. We have a history doing research in seismic data. And we also now starting to do our data science projects that are going to be focused in geoscience data, but we are also going to be doing other types of data. And we do academic and industry projects. As well, we work with training like R, Python, and MATLAB programming languages, and also some how to create applications. For example, in these learning labs that we are giving now, that we're going to be using all those analyses, how to create some apps or dashboards where you can bring more value to our working. So you're going to increase the business value to what you're doing. All the sessions for these learning labs, they are recorded, and all the videos and all the codes, they can be accessible from the Cruz website in the link for the data science. If you click in this link, we open the Cruz data science, and we have all the previous labs in here, and you can watch the videos and also download all the codes. For example, in the last lab, we talked about the WTI crude price oil forecasting using the Facebook Prophet. So includes here the analysis file and the app that you can create with all the files that is used to create the app, like the CSS and all other stuff like that. So the first thing, let's go for the app demonstration, what you're going to be building today. So that's the app that you're going to be building. You're going to be using the information from the plants to try to create some clusters. You're going to be clustering. So you're going to be working in how to use this layout from the Flexdashboard and how to include those buttons to change, for example, what are the features that you want to use to calculate the clusters. Now I unselected 2. I select the sepal and the petal length, and if you click apply, it's going to recalculate the clusters. You see that's different. And here we can change the name of the number of clusters that you want to calculate, for example, 4. And it's making a big confusion in here. And also on the fly, change the axis of the plots. So we're going to change it here and change it here. So as you change, it's going to do the new plot. And then you can reset and go back to the how it was before. So let's just talk first about the data set. So the iris data set is a data set about flowers. We have two types of flowers, the versicolor, the virginique, and the setosa. And they have some difference based on the petal length and petal width, and the sepal length and sepal width. So we're going to use this information to see if we can find a difference between them. And they're going to be doing that using a k-mean clustering. We're going to be using a function from base R. So you don't need to use any libraries to use this function. It's comes from the R automatically. And the k-means, it's an algorithm that start with a guessing point for a center of a clusters, and then up by iterations, it updates for more optimal clustering by calculating the distance between the center and all the points and updating the position of the center to be the geometrical center of the clusters all the time. So it's gonna work like this. We have to select the number of clusters for this library, select the number of features that we want to use, what are the features, and they're gonna be ending up to plot the clusters. So just a note here, we are not searching for the optimum solution. This is just a lab to show you how to create an app. So we're just gonna do some analysis, see something that's working, and then create an app based on that. So let's build the app. So I'm gonna come here, open my R coding. So what are gonna be provided for you when you download? First, to install the libraries that you need to use to create the apps and to do those analyses. So for the app, we're going to install the Flexdashboard. That's the main one that we are using. The Shiny Widgets, and the Shiny GS to create some more interactive app where you can include the buttons and everything. We're going to be using for visualization the Plotly for interactive figures, and the package DT just to print the table in a more fashion way. So you're gonna have these install libraries. If you don't have this library installed already, you just select them all, or you can do one by one and press Control Enter. I'm not gonna do now because I have all installed. Just to run one by one. Here, I'm gonna show the analysis that you have to do and what you want to include in the app. So this is also gonna be the R script, and this is how we're gonna do. We're just gonna be loading the libraries, the Plotly and the DT for the visualization for the table. I just selected and press Control Enter to run. You can see here, down here, that it's running. So it's loaded the libraries in the console. So the next one is the datasets library. You don't need to install that. It comes installed in the R. So there is a bunch of datasets that come with the R. And one of the data that you can have is this data that's a function from these library datasets. We're going to be using the dataset iris. If I run this line here, Control Enter, you're going to see the iris dataset is created. So if I just, you see that it has 150 observations and 5 variables. If I click here and open, you can see that's the table where you have the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and the species. So for each one of these observations, we have all those measures. So the idea that you want to use, yes.
One suggestion, I think some people may be confused about where you type that because there are different options. Do they open the script or what type of our project, or start a new project? I think we sort of missed that at the beginning where to
You can start a new project and just run this. You can simply come here and start a new R script, for example. So if I start an R script, that's a simple file. It's like a text file, but that's gonna run everything that's related to R. If I want to call a library, I just have to type now the commands. I want to start the library like that, and Plotly, for example. See, it's gonna complete for you. And if I wanna run these, I just press Control Enter. Another way, you can just run here also in the console. So do the same way, library, Plotly. You're gonna load it the same way. So we have these different type of files. We have the R script, that's more like a text file. And we also have the R markdowns, like this. If you create one R markdown, like that, you're gonna have the type of a document that you want to have as your output. In this example, I'm just gonna show how to create an HTML. You can give a title, just I'm gonna say test, the author. When you click OK, you're gonna have this. So this is what is called a R markdown. You're gonna have a header, where you're gonna have like the title that's gonna be showing in the tab, the author, the date, and which type of output that you wanna do. And you're gonna have the chunks. The chunks are similar to the cells in Python. So everything that's inside a R chunk that we include here, this is, I'm saying that it's a chunk in R, and the name is setup. That's gonna appear here. And I wanna also include some comments. Include false, it means that it's not gonna appear in the HTML file, this chunk. But it's gonna run, it's not gonna appear. Everything that's outside the chunks, they are in the markdown format. So you can do like that, the same commands. And you can run cell by cell or chunk by chunk. You just click here, the arrow. Here in this case, it's just setting to echo all the chunks, means that all the chunks, the coding, are gonna be appearing in the HTML file. If I wanna do a summary of the cars, I just run here, and it's gonna appear right below. So this is the summary of this dataset cars. That's a dataset that also comes in the installation of R. And you can do plots like that. So it's gonna appear down here. And you also have the type of headers. This is a H2 header. That could be a session header. You have the H1 header that usually is the title of the file. That the type is just one point sound symbol. So it's just gonna be title or something. And if you need, this is the actual library named init-r. If you need this function, this code, you can select if you want to do in HTML, PDF, or Word. I'm going to do the init to HTML. It's going to ask me to save the file. So I have in this folder, I'm just going to save as test, just to show. So it's saved as a R markdown, because it's an R markdown, and it created this HTML file for you, where you have a title that's going to be in here. This is a H1 title, this is a H2 title, or the header 2, and you have all the information. For example, the codes in here, it's included as equal false, means that the coding is not to be appearing here, but the output, yes. When you put include equal false, even the code and the output are not going to be showing in the HTML file. And it actually created a file. So if you come here to the Files tab, you have this test.html that you can click and select to open the editor or in the web browser. So when you click that, you have it here in the web browser. So those are the different files that we have in the R. So you can create an R markdown. So you're going to be creating a report as you are coding. So it's very useful for reports. And that's the type of file that are going to be used to create our app, actually. So I'm just gonna close these, I'm gonna close these and not save. And I'm gonna remove these files as well, because those are just tests. So in the R, I just a text file that you have to run line by line. And when you create, for example, the head of Iris, we downloaded the data set. We are now, we loaded the data set to our environment. Now if I run the head of the Iris, it's gonna show in my console here, because this is not a RMarkdown. This is just an R file. So it's gonna be showing like in a terminal command in the console. However, if you wanna take a look in a better way to see the same table, that is this library named DT, that is this function named data table, where we can include the type of the data and some options, and it's going to create HTML2 for this table. So when you run this, it's going to open in the view, and that's how we have the table now. We can have some search, you can filter, we can sort by something. You decide. I'm sorting by species, so the descending, and so on. You can search something. You can change the number of entries that you want to see in one page. I'm going to include 150, so it means that we have all the data shown here. So that's nice. I'm just showing this because I'm going to using this kind of function for our app. So just now for the analysis, we have these features and the species. This species we are not going to be using as a feature. We want to see if you're using these 4 other measurements of the flower, if you can get a cluster that is similar to the species. So now we are coming to this clustering part, where I'm including these features is going to receive the column names. So something that a lot of people are going to ask is this type of arrow to receive, to give information about the variable. What is this? This is the same as if you do the equals. But just for history, R always uses this arrow. So we are just keep doing that because that's just the way that they always did. So if you want to do that, you just type Alt dash. So it's going to appear easily. You don't need to type like the larger sign and the dash. So what you're going to be doing here, we're going to be picking up the column names of the arrays from the first to the fourth column. So just a difference from Python. Python starts the first index as 0 and R starts in 1. So what this is doing, I can just select this part of the line and do Control Enter. It's gonna run just these parts, and you can see the output here. So what this command is doing is just getting the name of each one of these columns from 1 to 4, from the column 1 to column 4, and saving in an array type. So when I run this, I created a new features array that it's in here. So it's array of chars that goes from 1 to 4. So it means that you have 4 elements in here. And another thing that we have to define for the k-means is the number of clusters. So just for this starting analysis, I'm just going to start with 3 clusters. And we saved it here, now the values for the number of clusters. And there is this function that's from the R basis. You see that to use this, I didn't have to load any library, where I can do the k-means. And the only information that I need are a table with the features. So it's going to be the table that goes from the columns 1 to 4, means that's going to be a table that that only include these 4 variables. I'm excluding this species. And I need this to define the centers. That means the number of clusters. So when I run this, it's going to be quite fast. And I can see the cluster. So it's going to create an item here. That's a list of 9. If you actually click down here, we have a bunch of information. We have what are the clusters from 1 to 50. We can have all the center locations. We have another type of information that comes from this model. So if you want to use something that's inside here, we want to use like this, you can understand as a column, or this item, this list, we do the $sign. So the cluster, $sign, the clusters, that's the name of the variable, $sign cluster is gonna pick up all the clusters that were calculated from the k-means. So now what I'm gonna be doing here, I'm gonna be create a new cluster data, a table, where I'm just gonna do a column bind. I'm just gonna include the column of the clusters. So I just did this in a more fashion way. I'm creating the cluster data where I'm going to be picking up the iris table, this one with the 5 columns. I'm going to be binding, column binding this cluster in here, all the clusters information. So that's what we have when you do. You're going to have now a table with 6 columns. And this last one is going to be named cluster, $sign cluster. I don't want this name, so what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be renaming this column to cluster. Oops. So I'm just going to run this. So now I rename it to cluster. And I don't want this to be integer or numeric. I want this to be a factor. I'm going to be doing that for the printing part of when I'm going to be doing the plotting. The plot works better if you define this column as a factor. So that's what I'm going to be doing in here in this last part. You see nothing changed, but now the only difference is that it's going to be recognizing this as a factor instead of number. So now if you run all this line for the cluster data, we can do the data table for this. So now we should have here, oh, sorry, should be here the cluster data. So now if you run this, you're gonna see the cluster in here as well. So you see that most of the cluster 2 were sent to Citosa. If you look for all the entries, 150 entries, so the versicolor mostly are the cluster 3, and actually got cluster 3 for both versicolor and the other. And if you do now the plot, so what I'm gonna be doing here, I'm just defining what are the X and the Y axis. So we're gonna be create a G. That G, that's a plot element that you're gonna be using the ggplot package. So we're gonna be getting this cluster data. So we're gonna be piping. This piping means this output of this is gonna run in this code. So you'll just be getting this table, and you're gonna send to this ggplot that is gonna create a canvas for your print. It's gonna create that, an empty canvas, but has already all the aesthetics information. We have what are the X, the Y, and the color of each one of the points are gonna be based on the column cluster. If I wanted to now start to introduce points or lines, then I have to do this plus geom something. In this case, is geom point, and the size 2. So when I run this, so now we have the points with the clusters colored in here. And this last part, this theme BW, it's just a theme, black and white, just to make this plot a little more beautiful for the app. Oops. So it should be Control Enter. So now we just changed the layout of the plot. And the advantage to use ggplot, because ggplot, it's a very powerful plotting package for R, and it has a connection to Plotly. If you have the Plotly that do interactive plots, you just create this figure. I saved in this element G. Now it's saved in here. It recognizes as a class for the ggplot. And if I do this ggplotly, this plot here that's not interactive, it's just a static plot, is gonna now be an interactive plot. Like that. So now we can see all the information for each one of the points. We can zoom in. We can turn off some clusters, turn on, and we have all the also a few options in here. We can pan around. So if you select double click to go back, you can pan around and so on. So that's what you're going to be using for our app. So now that we know what you want to do, so let's create the app. So if we installed the Flexdashboard, it's quite simple to start from the template from the Flexdashboard. What you're going to do, you're going to come up here to create a new file. So we're going to create a new RMarkdown. If you installed, again, the Flexdashboard, you can come here from template, and you might have here a template for Flexdashboard. So if you just select this one and do OK, you're going to create this first template. That's a Flexdashboard template, and it has orientation columns, and the vertical layout is fill. Means, so if I just save this as an RMarkdown, I'm going to save as my first app.rmd. We saved this RMarkdown. We didn't give a title or anything, but if we need this one, we check here in the files. We create my first app. If we just need this one, it's going to create a HTML file as well that has all those information in here. So it created this template for this dashboard, where you have the untitled, that should be the title that you can change here. And you have the columns, because you selected the orientation to be in columns. And for each one of the columns, this is one column, and the columns are recognized by those dashes. If I remove those dashes, it's not going to recognize as a column, but those dashes means that the Flexdashboard is going to recognize, okay, this is a column. And this in the top here is kind of be the title of the column. If I even make it a little smaller, we're going to enter in the mobile view, probably of this, or we should. And you can see that you even have the mobile view of this. So, and here it's just some coding to say what is the width of the column. You can imagine that we have 1,000 and 650 is going to be just a 65% of the width of your screen. You can actually open these also in the browser, or just keep looking into it. You also created a file, the HTML file. But this is not a Shiny yet. We don't have any Shiny application. So first, let's start to do what you want to build. Initially, you wanted to decide what you're going to include on each column. So the only things that are going to appear in our app are the outputs of the chunk, if you have a table or if you have anything. So if we include another chunk in here, that's just to load the data. If you do Control Alt you create a R chunk like that. So just a easy way. We can select we can run all the code, we can load the data and everything. So first, let's include some libraries that we're gonna be using here. So I like to separate by the type of the libraries that we're gonna be doing our research. So we have the Flexdashboard. Another library that you're gonna be needing is the Shiny. Another one is the Shiny Widgets. So the Shiny is to create all those interactive, basically a web page. Those Shiny Widgets just give you more options for buttons and everything like that. And we have also the library Shiny JS to run JavaScript, to run some more interactive version. So another library that you're going to be using is for visualization. Oops. So it's going to be the library Plotly that you're going to be using here. And for the tables, we're going to be using the library VT. And for the data sets, the library dataset. Okay. So one thing that you're gonna be starting to note when you start to do the change is that the RStudio, this IDE, is gonna start to understand what type of file you're creating. As soon as it starts to be a little more shiny, it's gonna change this run and this neat to do the run document or run app. So this one is gonna actually change to run document instead of neat. So first, like we did in our analysis, we can just start to copy and paste stuff just to start to include in here. We're gonna load our data set. So our data set is the iris, like here. So if I just clean now this environment, so, and I wanted to run this chunk, there are two options to run this chunk. You can click in this arrow, or you can do Ctrl-Shift-Enter. So you run. So I'm loading all the libraries. In here, I'm creating the data set. So that's how you run in the RMarkdown. A first thing that you want to do, we want to include in the chart A, I want to do the clustering. So I'm going to change this name for clustering. And the chart B, that's going to be this chart here. I'm going to do the table. And the chart C, we're not going to be using. So I'm going to delete this chart in here. So now we have the data. So we want to do the clustering. So we can just come here in our analysis. We did this clustering. We can do exactly the same thing we did before. We just copy and paste here. Oops, sorry. Yeah, could be here. And then we're going to include the plot in here, actually, the plot of the clustering. So we're going to include this part here. So just to be a little more visually coherent, so I'm going to remove this one from this. I'm just going to create another R chunky here where I'm doing the processing of the data. So if I just run this, now I'm going to have all the clusters information, but actually I should comment this. So to comment is just the pound sign, because I don't want to have this input in here. And here, if I run, I have the Plotly. It's going to create it here. But if I need this file, now it's going to appear here in the chart R, in the chart A. It's just running. It's going to create the HTML file. It's going to update in here. So now we have the plot in here. So that's cool. Another thing that I want to do, I want to change the title, not for untitled. I just change it here. I'm going to call this my first Flexdashboard app. So now if I do the neat again, it's going to change this title in here. And the last thing that I want to include here is the table that's going to be in this area of our dashboard. So we also did this table. We use this data table function from DT. I'm just going to copy and paste in here. So I'm going to save if we need. Now we're going to have a complete dashboard in an HTML file format. So it just runs and it creates in here. If you open in the browser, so that's how we're going to see it in the browser. Okay, but that's not what we want to do. We actually want to change things. We want to change the number of the cluster. We want to calculate things on the fly. So remember, in the beginning of the demonstration, we had a sidebar. So if you want to start doing that, then you have to start to go for the Shiny application. So for now, you're just neating and create an HTML file, like we have here, this HTML file. If you want to now start to do the Shiny application, in the header here, in the Y header, we have to include a line named runtime column Shiny. Means now that you're going to be creating a Shiny app. Just to doing that and doing the neat, you're going to see a thing that's changed. You're going to be creating a port, and it's going to keep running here in the RMarkdown tab. It's not going to create a HTML file anymore. Or is it going to create? No, it didn't create an HTML file. What's done? It's running. It's open a new. It gave a port and an address to this, and it's running. You can see here by this thinking GIF here that it's running. So, and that's how we're going to create our Shiny. So I'm going to just keeping it running. So the first thing that you want to do, you want to include a sidebar. So to include a sidebar is basically to include a new column. We do sidebar, and if you include this bunch of dashes here, could be just 4 dashes is enough, but I like to do a lot just to separate. And if you run this again, it's just going to create a new column in here. I just want to show how things are. So it created here with no size given. If I want this to be a sidebar by itself, I have to include a command here between curly brackets with dot sidebar. Now, if I just run this with the neat R, it's going to create a different layout for everything that is on this side. See, now we have the sidebar down here. And what we want to do, we want to start to include some functions like we have before, like some buttons. So the first thing that you're going to do, you're going to create an R section. And something now, we're going to start also to use some HTML tags comments. Like, for example, there is a HTML tag named div that it's to create a new block in HTML. What I'm going to be doing here, I'm just going to give a class for it. A class means something that I'm going to have changes related to this class. So we can connect this to a CSS file. And what I'm doing here, this class is going to be text center. Means that every text that's going to be here is going to be in the center. And I'm just going to include some text in here now. So it's going to be my first Flexdashboard calculate the species flowers clusters from the iris data set. So when I do this, what I'm doing now, if I need, I'm just going to include a text here on the sidebar. So if I just update it here, what I'm doing, running again, now I have this text included here. Another thing that I want to do here in the beginning, I want to run another code, named this use Shiny JS. This is from the Shiny JS library. Says that I want to run the Shiny JS in the RMarkdown. So I'm going to do RMarkdown equal true. So that's something that we're going to be using later when I'm going to include some buttons. So another thing that I want to do, I'm going to include the HR command. That means a horizontal line. So by doing that, if I just save it here and update the file in here, I'm just going to be creating a horizontal line below the text, like this one. So now let's start doing some stuff. I'm going to include another block in here, where also is going to have the same class as above. So it's going to be text center, and I'm just going to give a title in here. So if I want to do the type of headers, like header 1, header 2, like header 1 is 1 pound, header 2, 2 pounds, header 3, 3 pounds. If I want to do a header 3 in the HTML side and as bold, I do as a strong command and do some, include some text, I do clustering. So I'm going to be including now just a small title in here. And I'm going to start to include some buttons. So the first thing that you want to include, you want to pick which ones are going to be our features that you're going to be using. So, okay. So now we're going to be using some Shiny and Shiny Widgets commands. So the first one is going to be this picker input. And how we do that? We have to give some information for this picker input. We're going to first do input ID. We're going to give you a name to this picker input where we're going to be calling it after. So it's going to be features. The next one, we need to give I'm going to give a label for this, just a title for this button. So I'm going to give this as a h4 header, and it's going to be called features for clustering. Then we need to start to give some information to the button. First, what are the choices that you're going to have? So the choices. So we want to be all the choices are going to be all the 4 columns with the measurement of the flowers. So we're going to do the same as we did in the analysis. Do the column names for the iris. I had to put this comma in here because we have the rows and the columns. So it's comma 1 to the 4. So it means that I'm going to get in all the rows from the columns 1 to 4. So it means that the choices that I'm going to have there are going to be all the features. We have to do the selected. Oops. So what are going to be selected by default? So I'm gonna do the same. All the 4 are gonna be selected. And another thing that I want to include is this multiple option, that I want to select multiple options at the same time. If I just save that and do a update in here, you're gonna start to see a difference in our app. Now we have this button here. So we have the button where you can select all our features in here, but they are not connected to anything. I can change here, select all or not. It's not gonna change anything. For now, I just included the button in here, these buttons in here. So just to make this one a little more beautiful and easier to use, I'm gonna include some options that we can have. So we do like that, options. We have to do the picker options. You can look for that everything in the help, in the helper. For example, if you want to see a help for this function, you can come here in the console, do the interrogation, picker options. If you enter, it's gonna be appear here in the options. So you have all the information about this function and how you can use. Or you can just come to this tab in here and click in here. For example, the picker input. If you press enter, so you have your help in here, how to use everything. So that's a good way. It's very easy to get help here in R. So I'm gonna just include some options. So what I'm gonna do is the action box equals to true. The selected format, selected text format, I'm gonna be doing the count larger than 2. So it means that it's gonna just appear the names here if it's smaller than 3. So it's gonna appear what you selected. If you just have 2, if you have 3 selected, it's gonna appear a number. And the next thing is the size. So size equals 10. So if you do now the update in here, and you're gonna see a few changes now in the button. So now you see we have 4 items selected because of this option that I included here, selected text format. And the action box is this one that appeared in here, to select all or deselect all. So it's gonna be easier to run. I deselect all, I just wanna select 2, or select all again. Okay, so another button that you want to, and if you wanna see what's the output of this, we could just see something like that. We could do render print, and then the input. We never created a variable named input, but this is for the Shiny. It means that all the inputs, everything that's been included by this button, and what is the element. So it's going to be the features. So we are doing this render print. So this ID here is that how you use in here. That's how I'm going to be calling. So if you just save this is just to print what it's being picked here. So it's very good for you to run these to understand how things are being inputted in your buttons. So it's going to appear this box here. So you see what it's creating is creating an array with all the selected options. If we change here, for example, deselect all, now it's empty here. If you open here, select sepal length, you can see how they are understanding all those inputs in Shiny. Okay, so I'm just gonna comment this for now. To comment, you can do Ctrl-Shift-C to comment very fast. So I'm gonna include a few buttons. I think this meeting is gonna be a little more than 1 hour. So I believe that I'm going to the end to try to explain everything to everybody. If anyone needs to leave, that's okay. But I'm gonna keep going with this. So a few things that I wanna do. I wanted to include a numeric peak to select the number of clusters that I wanna use. So the next one is gonna be a numeric input. So the same way, I need to give an input ID for that. And what I'm gonna call this is any clusters. I'm gonna give a label as well. So another H4 header. And number of clusters. So the initial value, that's the initial number that are gonna be there when the app loads, so include value. So it's gonna be 3. We can select a minimum. So I want to be the minimum of clusters to be 2, because if someone put 1, 0, or negative number, the k-means are gonna give an error. And the max is gonna be by your choice, but here I'm just gonna select to be 10 clusters. So if we save this now and run, again, if you update, we're gonna start to have another button here. So the same way, we have the 3. If I try to put 1, for example, press enter, it's gonna give an error because it must be greater than 2, but I can select 4, I can select 10, but I cannot select 11 as well. It must be lower than 10 because we define it here. But again, it's not changing anything in the plot. We're gonna show somehow we're gonna change everything in the plot. But if you also wanna see how is the input being interpreted by R, so you can do the same. The render print, the input, now the $, any clusters. You just need to make sure that this name is correctly equal this name, yes. So if you save, run this, so we're just gonna update the app. So now that's how I interpret it. It's gonna give a number. So if you just change it here to 2, press enter. If you change to 6, so it's recognizing everything in here. Okay. So I'm gonna comment this. And with that, we can do the clustering analysis. So for the clustering, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna actually include this one below, actually, the sidebar, Control X. I'm just cutting these and I'm gonna paste this here. So we have the features, we have the clusters, and we have everything that we wanna use. However, they are not gonna be interactive. They are not gonna change. They're not changing in here. So we can start to do some changes in here. First of all, we have to include some reactive buttons. So let me say the features. So what are the selected columns? So I'm gonna create a new one, selected. So Alt dash to receive, and I'm gonna use this command, reactive. And I have to give an expression for the reactive. This means that it's gonna change when I change things in the input. So it's gonna be like iris, our data set that we loaded. So it's gonna receive the columns that you're gonna use as the input, $, features. So what we're doing here, we are just creating a new element. If you wanna run this one just for you to take a look, in the environment, we created this selected. Now it becomes a function that is gonna be changing as we change the inputs in our app. So the iris is gonna be selected. So if you want to now calculate the cluster data, so I wanted this to be calculated only after I use some commands. So initially, what I'm going to include here, I should have done this before. I just want to run the cluster when I click some button named apply, for example, because I don't want to just change here and it keeps calculating. Change something here, keeps calculating. Keep try number, calculate on the fly. I want to do only after I selected all my features, or your app is going to be really slow. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to include an action button. So it's going to be like action button. And we have to give an input ID as well. We're going to give the name apply. We're going to give a label as well. Something that's going to appear in the bottom, So I'm going to call this apply as well. And you can actually give an icon for this. And it uses from the website Font Awesome. If we come here and look for the Font Awesome, this one, you can see different type of icons that you can use. So we have icons, and you can select. You have the free and the paid version. You're going to be using the free. We have less options, but we can select. You can give just this name. In here, for example, address card is going to use this. And how you're going to be using in here, you're going to give an icon. And then you're going to use the command icon from the Shiny. And the name is going to be play. You're going to be using the play icon. If you look here, the website, the play icon is going to be this one. And the package is the Font Awesome. You can use another package as well, another source, but I'm going to do this Font Awesome. Okay. And when I do that, if I update here, let me just minimize this. If I update now my app, I have this button here. I can click here, but nothing happens because it's not connected to anything. But the button exists in here. Just to separate here, I like to include a HR, just a horizontal line. So the next time it's going to appear here. So going back to the clustering, we're going to be now doing something that requires her to click the apply to calculate. So what you're going to be doing, you're going to be calculating the cluster data. It's going to receive now event reactive. This command means that I have to do something before running some expression inside there. So the event expression that I have to run is the input $apply, because this action button is going to be false, 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 false until I click it. When I click it, it's going to be recognized as true. So it's going to run everything that's inside this event reactive, and then I have to do the value expression. So what I want to run, so I have to open the curly brackets, and I can include all the type of codes inside here. So what you can do, we can just copy this part in here, because you're going to be calculating the clusters. I'm just going to be including now inside here. And I'm just going to select this and give a tab. So we want to calculate the clusters. So the first thing that you want to use is the k-means, the x, are going to be the selected ones. So when I create a reactive variable like that, it is recognized as a function. So I have to do this selected. And then I have to open and close parentheses, because now it's a function. And the centers I want to be the input of the buttons of the number of clusters. So it's going to be the input $sign number of clusters. Okay. So I guess we can just delete this. We don't need this part in here. Okay, and I think that's it. We can actually remove these as well. Now if we save and update our app, so we might see some difference. I'm missing some argument in my ggplot. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot that I also have to update my ggplot. So that's we're gonna do in here. So you can see that we have an error. So I have also to create another to the plot to update after we change this. So the first thing you have to do, you do the render plotly. This is from the plotly command library, but to run with Shiny. And we have to do an expression inside here. And what you're going to do is exactly just this part in here. Okay. So initially, you're going to keep the X and Y the same. So it's going to be always the same plot, but we're going to change that later. I'm just going to select this, give a tab to be a little more easy to see. And the data is going to be this cluster data that are going to be plotted, but now it's also a reactive function, so you also have to put the parentheses. So if I save this now and update here, data must be two-dimensional data frame or matrix. Okay, so I'm having an error in here, and that's okay. Let me just check here what I did differently. So if I run this, I might do some debugging, some live debugging. So I created this, so I have the cluster data. So I'm plotting the X and Y. So here, because we still have the table. So I'm just gonna comment this because I'm not gonna be using now. Just wanna see if the plot is working. It's not gonna work if I do in the data table. I have to do another function. So let's just see if everything is working at the bottom. Okay, the first thing that you see when I loaded the app, nothing appears. So if I click apply, and then I might have the plot. If I change here now the selected items, deselect all, just include 2, and do the new apply, it's gonna calculate. But I want an app that's gonna open and have everything already run. So we do that by this event reactive, because this one needs the apply. So we need to include just another option in here that is gonna be the ignore new. So we're gonna include as false. So this means that it's gonna run for the first time as we start the app. So now when we restart the app, now it's run for the first time. If I do the apply again, it's gonna run again, keep running, and keep changing. Okay, see every time, because it's a random starting point, we might have different clustering. But it's running, and if you change the number of clusters in here and do the apply, it works. If we change the select all, select just 2 of them, do the apply, it works. If you selected 3 of them, we might have more clusters and different clusters and so on. So it's updating, right, as we click the button. So another one that I'm gonna do is this table. So for this table, I'm gonna use also from this DT table, something that works very similar. So I just wanna include something that's very nice. If I don't wanna load, actually, the library here, because I'm just gonna use one time. So I can comment this as an example. But I wanna use one function from one library that I know that I have. I can do like that. I can do the name of the library, like this, dt, and then I do column, and then I include the name of the function that I want to do. So it's going to run normally. So it's going to, the same thing. It's going to be the same as this data table, but this one has a render data table. So it's just going to be something to render in a Shiny app. Okay. So what we have to do, we have, oops, sorry. We first have to give an expression, just the little difference. This expression is actually the data, the same equivalent to the data. And what you're going to be giving is the cluster data. Cluster data, that's actually this function now. Okay, and after that, you're going to give some options. That are going to be the same one that you gave here. So I'm just going to copy and paste just to make the plot, the table a little more visually makes sense. Oh. And I'll save these. I'm just going to make this because this is from the data render. Now, if we just update in here, now we have the table here on the side. Now I'm just gonna open this in the web browser. So that's how we're gonna be seeing your app in the web browser from now on. So we have the clusters, we have all these pieces, all the information, and we can change. So a few things that I want to include. I wanted to change the plot, the axis of the plot by selecting here, and I want also to include the reset button to go to the default after I do whatever I wanted to do in here. So just to be a little more easy to see, I'm just gonna make this one smaller in here. So I'm gonna be updating automatically in the browser, everything. So apologize the way I'm doing. And also this R, I'm gonna be just including here and making this a little smaller. So I'm gonna be coming and go and come back to the web browser like that. So I can make, because of that, I can make this smaller. So I'm gonna be checking that. Okay, so now let's include those buttons to change the X and Y of the plot. So I'm gonna start including here. So just to make another change, I'm just gonna see how I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do for the plotting. I'm gonna do this HR, again, just a horizontal line. And then I'm gonna do another picker input, like we did above. So the input ID is gonna be the x-axis. So I'm just gonna call this X. The label is gonna be the x-axis. I like to put uppercase. The choices are gonna be the same as we have before, all the 4 column names. So all the column names in here. So those are gonna be our choices. If you run just this line here, Control Enter, you're gonna see those are our options. So what I'm gonna leave as default, so it's gonna be the selected. I wanted to use this first one, the sepal length. Another thing, I'm gonna include the options. the picker options and just the size to be the same as the other. Okay, so now we are including this. We just update the page. Now we have a new button. In here, where you can select it, and as I didn't select the multiple to be true, it's going to be just selecting one by one. Okay, so I'm going to do the same for the y-axis. I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm just going to now name this y, the input ID. Y is going to be the y-axis, and the initial peak is going to be the petal length. Okay, so just I saved it here. When I save and update the page, the browser, we are going to have now these buttons included in here. But they are still not working. We just need to include them in the plot. So we can include in here what's X and what is Y. So X is going to be the input $X, and the Y is going to be the input $Y. So if I save this now it should be changing as well the plot as we change them. So we have the plot, we have the initial value done. So now if we change this to sepal width, so it changes on the fly. If we change this to pedal width, it changes also the Y. If you do pedal length by pedal width, so again, so now it's almost done. The only thing that you want to do is to include that reset button that's going to change everything back to the previous one. So when I change here the number of clusters, they do not run on the fly because I did as a event reactive. And also what you want to do for this, for the features. So we have the update of the tables. Now we have the update of the clusters and everything seems to be working. So now let's start including a new action button that is going to be the reset button. So it's very similar. We do the action button, and the input ID is going to be reset. The label, we're going to call this reset, and we're going to give an icon as well. So it's going to be an icon, and the name is going to be equal sync. If I don't define the library that I want to use, it's go automatically for the font also. So we have this. I just save it. If I just update, now you're going to have a new button included here, the reset. But if I click, nothing happened. I can change or deselect all. But if I reset, nothing's going to happen. So now I need to make an event to be observed when I'm looking to this reset. So that's the command, observe event. So every time that I do the event, event expression input $reset, we are gonna change this expression in here now, the handle expression. So for do that, we have to reset button by button. So I'm gonna do this, try to do this quite fast by the timing. So every time that we include one of those buttons, we have another function where you can update those buttons. So if you wanna do the update of the picker input, we're gonna do update. Update picker input. So we have to select, we have to define the session. The session is always going to be session. You don't have to worry too much about that. The input ID that you want to change is the features. For this one, I want to create one that's going to reset the features button. And what I want to update are the selected values. So the selected are going to be the same one that you had selected in the beginning. So you can just copy in here, Ctrl C, and Ctrl V. Just save. Now, just to test if this reset button is work, we are gonna update our app. So you're gonna deselect all, just select 2 of them, do one apply. So we have changed it. When you click the reset, yes, it's back. Now we have 4 buttons selected again. Okay, so I'm gonna do this for all the other 4 buttons. So I have this code here. I'm just gonna copy and paste for what I did before. And just to save time for us, and I'm gonna explain what I'm doing. So I just copy and paste. So the same thing I'm doing the update for the numeric input, the number of clusters to the value go back to the 3, and also for the input picker for the plot session to the X and Y to be respectively sepal length and petal length. And another thing that I'm doing this is I want to, after I do the updating in here, you can see it changed for the 4 selected items, but it didn't change the clustering. I'm not gonna update this now, so I'm gonna deselect, just select these 2, for example, do the apply, and it changed the clusters. But if I do the reset, it didn't change here. I wanted to reset all the values and to run again the app. I don't wanna run again the clustering. So that's what I'm including. When I do the reset, I'm gonna include this is a Shiny GS command. That's named the click, and the ID is the apply. So every time I do the reset, I may also be clicking the apply. And I just put this delay in the 300 milliseconds because the plot might be updated faster than the apply, than the clustering calculation. Everything might be a little messy if you don't do this delay. So when you save this and when you update, now you're gonna have your complete app where you have the clustering plot, where you can change again everything in here. The number of clusters, I'm gonna be 5. I can apply. So I changed all the tables, all the clusters. I can change the plot to be these and these, for example. And if I click the reset, now it's going back to calculate with the 3 clusters, 4 items, and we are back. So that's the app that you have to show for today. I'm just gonna end up now with some closing notes for what we are doing. So we are in this Shiny app customization block in our series, in our data science learning lab series. We finished today this lab 2, the fundamentals of R, Flexdashboard, Shiny, and data science. And for the next lab, what you're going to be talking about is a small introduction to HTML, CSS, and the Chrome Dev2 files for the Shiny app layout. What does it mean is that for the next lab, you're going to learn how to change the color, how to include icons, how to change the color of everything in here to make more similar, so you can to your organization or company or group that you want to have. So you can create your own template in that. So I guess that's it for today. I think it's just was longer than I was expecting, but we are finally done. So if you have any questions, no, we had just a comment from Daniel that I couldn't see. So do we still have people online?
No, I was just suggesting to split at some point in the middle. So in the next class, what we can do is to go through the problems that people may have when they try, right? Like I know for myself, I will go through your video and be pausing it and try to go all the steps. So other people as well may have questions about things that different steps. So we can do that next class maybe.
Okay. Well, the advantage that all those videos are being recorded. So when you watch the recorded session, you can, as Daniel said, you can pause everything. So it was a little longer than 1 hour that was planned, but I believe that you covered everything. So I think now we have enough tools and enough knowledge to create your own app. So you can go and search for the Shiny widget, library, Shiny.js, and see how to include different type of buttons, and so on, all your needs. But now you have an idea how things are working. And by continuing the labs, you cannot forget that I'm going to be also using different data sets, different type of analysis, and different layouts. And every time you're going to have access, so you're going to have examples to create your own app. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, I'm just going to stop the recording. Then I'm going to end the session. Okay, so thank everybody for coming, and hope to see you in the next lab. Bye-bye.